Hello everyone, this is Jason from Primetime Aquatics, and today I wanted to talk about something I think is really important, and it stems from a comment that Rick made when we recently did a tour of his fish room. I'll put a card in the upper right hand corner. If you haven't checked it out, I highly recommend you do. But at the end of the fish room tour, I asked him, as I asked everybody when I do a fish room tour, for his words of wisdom. And he made the comment that whether you've got 1,000,000 tanks or one, if you're doing that well, then be happy with it. And I think it's important for us who are showing our fish rooms and have all these fish tanks to really bring home that point, so stay tuned. So I think it's important for people who have a large fish room to really clearly communicate the demands that are required for maintaining such a large space. So it's often the case where we have all these tanks and we show off all these fish and how cool it is. We get new fish, we swap fish, we add tanks, we add filtration, we add systems. And for someone who maybe doesn't have this, it can be easy to say, wow, that would be really, really cool. If one tank is awesome, two must be twice as good. If two tanks are great, then four would be even better. And if four is great, then maybe 40 is really what I need to be truly happy in the hobby. And that isn't necessarily the case. Now, it happens to be the case for me, but for a lot of people, I think we have to have a realistic understanding of what it's going to take to maintain all of these tanks. And so today, I wanted to talk about the amount of time it takes for us to maintain this fish room that you see every single week. So in this video, we're going to talk about the amount of time it takes to maintain this fish room. In a future video, we'll talk about cost, and I'll try to be as open as I can about the cost of running and maintaining a fish room such as this. So when it comes to time, I think we all know we have to feed our fish, right? If you've just got one tank, it's not something you really think about in terms of time. You drop some food in every day, maybe a couple times a day, and you're done with it. In the basement alone, we currently have 52 tanks up and running, including our fry bins. Upstairs, we have another 5. Now, to keep all those tanks fed, in the morning, I spend about 25 minutes feeding fish. Think about that for a second. 25 minutes in the morning. I have to get up a half hour earlier than I normally would to make sure all the fish get fed. I feed them a variety of foods, and at some point we'll do a video on what I feed and why I feed the fish what I feed. But it takes about 25 minutes in the morning. Then, before I go to bed in the evenings, it's another 25 minutes because I like to feed our fish smaller amounts more frequently as opposed to large amounts less frequently. So if you think about that, every single day, I spend a minimum of 50 minutes, almost an hour, feeding fish, right? The bare necessities. We all do it. But for us, when we've got 57 tanks currently up and running at the time of this video, that takes me almost an hour a day. Okay, so the feeding is done. What about maintaining all of these tanks? Now, we've done videos on how we maintain our fish room. I will put a card in the upper right-hand corner. But time-wise, it's myself and my 2 boys. And we generally split up the cleaning times about 3 days a week. And so Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays tend to be our cleaning days. And for the 3 of us, we're down here for an hour and 20 minutes each time cleaning tanks. We split them up. Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays are the cleaning time. We take basically a third of the fish room each time we do it to clean the tanks. So that's an hour and 20 minutes 3 times a week. Now, I have them helping me. If I were to do it on my own, it wouldn't necessarily be 3 times as long because we can run multiple hoses from multiple tanks at the same time. But I suspect if I were doing it by myself, it would take me about 2 hours 3 times a week to maintain this fish room. And again, that's just doing the water changes, maybe gravel vacuuming in the tanks where we have no plants, scraping algae, getting duckweed out, making sure the sponge filters are cleaned, and the hang on the back filters, a few that we actually run, they're still maintained properly. So we're looking at about another 6 hours a week. And then, of course, you can add in some time for moving fish around, catching fry, catching mothers that are holding, that kind of thing, females that are holding. So if you combine all that together, it's probably about another hour a day. So to properly feed the fish that we have, I'm looking at about 2 hours a day, minimum, every single day, every single week of the year. So it's something to think about. The point here is you've got to find a balance for you. What do you enjoy? If you have one tank, you're probably doing a pretty awesome job of maintaining that one tank. It's got all of your attention. The fish in that tank have all of your attention, what you feed it, how you aquascape it. If you've got live plants, you're paying attention to how those plants are growing and maintaining the plants, watching the fish. You get another tank, now your time is split. And as you add more tanks, you have to split your time amongst those different tanks. And one of the things I don't think gets talked about enough in the hobby, especially for people who have a lot of tanks with a lot of fish, is our time does get split amongst all these tanks. And so yes, some of the time gets split away. And so if I had one tank it would be as magnificent as I could make it. It would be aquascaped to my fullest abilities. It would be maintained and focused on all the time. You add more tanks, you have to start splitting your time. And so in our fish room, we've tried to find a balance. Some of our tanks are aquascaped fairly nicely. Others, they're pretty much breeding tanks, and we have to find a balance, right? If we've got tanks where there's going to be breeding, do I want to look at a bare tank? Not necessarily, but at the same time, I can't put a bunch of rocks in the tank and a bunch of live plants knowing that I may have to catch females out or fry, and I'm going to tear up the tank doing it once a month. It doesn't make sense to aquascape it as fully as I might normally. So for you, the question you have to answer is how much time do you have and how much time do you really want to commit to the hobby? Make it reasonable. Yes, for people you see on YouTube with these large fish rooms, it looks like it's an amazing thing, and it can be. And for us, we really do enjoy it. But not everybody wants to spend 2 hours a day on average maintaining and just feeding fish, not to mention all the other miscellaneous things that come up. So I will reiterate what Rick said in his fish room video. If you've got a single tank and it's been successful, be very happy with that. And think long and hard as you want to add more tanks, add more animals. They all need to be cared for properly. They all need to be maintained in a healthy way. And be thinking about that as you expand your fish room. And when you do, and you do it right, it can be very rewarding, but just make sure that you've got the time for it. So in a future video, we'll talk about the cost of maintaining a fish room, but I wanted to talk a little bit about the time today. So if you enjoyed this video, share, subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.